So welcome back to the third and last mini lecture from Coral Springs, Florida, rather, on Chapter 3. And if you go to your Brightspace for the course, you go into the tab that says Other Neat Stuff, and I've posted a bunch of stuff in there already. You're going to find a Chapter 3 job aid. So I'll walk you through it now, but what I would suggest is you print this job aid out and use it as you work through the homework, use it as if there's a take-home part of the exam, use it there, and use it, it's my gift to you. And what I did to make it, I think, most user-friendly is I've not only prepared this job aid, but I've also indicated to you what practice exercise it relates to. And you'll find when you get to the homework, a lot of this stuff also repeats itself in the homework. So when we did exercise 2, we had to figure out practice exercise 2 in class. We had to figure out what were the number of units that we had to account for. And these are the whole units. So you take the beginning inventory, you figure out the started and completed units, and then you've got the units that are transferred out, plus the ending inventory. Those are the total number of whole units that you have to account for. And the tricky part here is to get that, the beginning inventory in units is going to be pretty straightforward. The started and completed is going to be tricky. So what I would suggest you do there is you take the number of units started and simply subtract out the ending work in process, and that'll give you the units started and completed. So beginning inventory plus started and completed, then you got the units that were transferred out, and then you've got the ending inventory. Those are the total units that you have to account for, not the equivalent units, but the whole units. So you did that in a practice exercise 2. Then you started to deal with equivalent units. Now, equivalent units, we're going to do it first for materials. And remember, for the beginning inventory, if we assume that materials are added at the beginning of the process, the equivalent, look in the middle column there. Remember, I said think in terms of rows and columns. In the middle column, since materials are added at the beginning of the period, there are no materials that are added to the beginning inventory when you try to get the equivalent units from materials. As far as started and completed, the fact that it's started and completed, you can assume they're 100% complete with regard to materials. And then the ending inventory, since materials are added at the beginning of the process, you can assume that they would be 100% added this period as well. So when you get the equivalent units, what you simply do is you take the relevant whole units and you multiply by 100%. So whatever you had in beginning inventory times 0, anything times 0 is going to be 0. Started and completed, whatever whole units you had multiplied by 100%. And then when it comes to ending materials, the ending materials are going to be, ending work in process is going to be 100% complete with regard to materials. So you just multiply the whole units of ending material by 100%. So that's how to get equivalent units for material, as we did in practice exercise 3. Practice exercise 4 is when we did equivalent units for conversion costs. And this one is a little bit, it's trickier than the materials and obviously trickier than whole units. So you have to ask yourself, take the number of units you had in beginning inventory, and then what you do is you multiply that by 100% minus the percent that was complete in the previous period. So if you had units that were 70% complete in the previous period, 100% minus 70 would give you 30%. So you'd multiply the whole units by 30%. That would give you the equivalent units for the beginning inventory. Started and completed, 2 words, started and completed. So you can assume that the equivalent units there would be 100%. So take the whole units of started and completed multiplied by 100%. And then with regard to the ending inventory would be whatever percent the ending inventory is complete at the end of the period. So if you had, say, 1,000 units and they were 60% complete, you would take 1,000 units times 60%, and that would give you 600. Okay? So these are how to get equivalent units. You've got equivalent units here for materials, and here's your equivalent units for conversion costs. Then you have to get the cost per equivalent unit. So the cost per equivalent unit for materials is the total materials cost this period divided by the equivalent units. That should be plural. and the cost of conversion per equivalent units, take the total conversion cost for the period and divide by the equivalent units. And that'll give you your cost per equivalent units. And then the last one, the trickiest one, and probably the trickiest homework problem as well, trickiest practice exercise, and therefore probably the trickiest homework problem, is when you've got to do this cost of production report. So here we're dealing with the actual cost. So what was the cost of the beginning inventory in terms of materials and conversion? Then you've got to add to that the work in process. So what additional work would have been done with regard to the material? So with regard to the work in process inventory. So materials would have been added at the beginning of the process, so there probably would have been no additional materials cost this period. But if the units in beginning inventory was, say, 60% complete, then for the conversion cost, you would have to pick up the 40% of those to complete 40% of the beginning work in process inventory, 40% of the conversion costs. Right? So that'll give you the work in process, and then the beginning work in process, the work on the work in process this period. That'll give you the work in process. Then the started and completed. Okay, so beginning inventory, total cost plus the started and completed. And that will then you figure out the amount of units that were transferred out, and the transferred out, the materials cost, and the conversion costs. And then the ending work in process, the costs are going to be 100% complete with regard to materials, and there's going to be a portion of them that is complete with regard to the conversion costs. All right. So when you get to the, we'll have to do the actual summary of production cost. I would suggest you use this little chart here. And notice that this chart is in dollars, so you have computations there that you have to plug in here. So what you end up is you want to come up with the total costs that were assigned, and the total costs that are assigned, it's going to be the amount that was transferred out, and the the total cost that is going to be assigned is going to be the transferred out plus the work in process. So you're going to have materials costs, you're going to have conversion costs, and then you're going to have total costs. All right. So again, I would suggest you use this little job aid. Use this one for exercise 2 and the parallel homework problem. Use this for practice exercise 3, where you get the equivalent units for materials and the related homework problem. Use this one for units, equivalent units for conversion costs in the practice exercise and the related homework. Use this one here for to get the cost per equivalent unit in the homework practice exercise 5 and the related homework, and use this little table here for the practice exercise number 6 and the related homework problem. Okay, so I hope you found that little job aid useful. Again, you will find that in the other neat stuff tab. All right, so until Tuesday, hasta luego, mi amigos y amigas.